The sky was dark with smoke, and the air was heavy with the smell of fire. The warrior walked slowly through the ruins, his boots crushing the broken stones. Everywhere around him were signs of destruction. Walls burned black, machines twisted and broken, and silence that felt too heavy. Only the wind moved, carrying the ashes of what was once a home. He had seen many battlefields, but this place felt different. There was no sound of soldiers, no cries of survivors, no voices at all. It was like the world itself had ended, leaving only shadows and broken memories. He kept his weapon ready, his eyes sharp, because danger always lived in silence. Then he heard it. At first, it was faint, like a whisper carried by the wind. A soft cry, small and fragile, hidden under the layers of smoke. The warrior froze, his heart beating harder. Was it real, or just his mind playing tricks after too many battles? He moved closer, following the sound. Step by step, he walked past broken walls and shattered glass. The cry grew clearer. It was the sound of a child, weak and desperate. He felt his chest tighten, because in a place like this, a child should not be alive. The warrior reached a pile of rubble, where smoke curled from the broken stones. He dropped to his knees and pushed aside the heavy blocks with his strong hands. Dust filled the air, stinging his eyes, but he did not stop. Beneath the ruins, he found a small form curled tightly, a child covered in ash. Her hair was tangled, her face streaked with dirt, but her eyes still moved. She looked at him with fear and hope at the same time. The warrior's heart, hardened by war, felt something it had not felt in years. He reached out, gently lifting her into his arms. The child clung to him with trembling fingers, as if holding the last piece of safety in a broken world. He whispered softly, though his voice was rough from smoke. "You're safe now, little one." But even as he said the words, he was not sure they were true, because behind him, the ruins were not empty. Something moved in the shadows, watching him with eyes that were not human. The warrior turned quickly, his hand tightening on his weapon. The child pressed her face into his chest, too weak to cry out. Out of the smoke, a figure stepped forward, tall and fierce. It was an alien huntress, her armor marked with scars of many battles, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. For a moment, they stared at each other in silence. The warrior expected an attack, his muscles ready. But the huntress did not raise her weapon. Instead, she stepped closer, her sharp gaze fixed on the child in his arms. Her voice was low, almost like a hiss, yet filled with something deeper. "She is yours," the huntress whispered. The warrior blinked, confused, his grip tightening around the child. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice hard but shaken. The huntress tilted her head, her eyes unreadable. "She belongs to you," she repeated, softer this time, almost like a secret carried by the smoke. The warrior's mind raced. He had never seen this child before, never known her. And yet, the huntress spoke with certainty, as if she knew something he did not. The child stirred in his arms, her small hand reaching toward the huntress. For a brief second, it felt like the air itself held its breath. Behind them, the ruins groaned as fire ate through what was left of the walls. The warrior knew he did not have time for questions. He only knew two things. The child was alive, and the huntress was not here to kill him, at least not yet. But why did she say those words? Why did she claim the child was his? The warrior held the girl tighter, his eyes never leaving the huntress. He felt the weight of a mystery he was not ready to face. And in the distance, he heard the faint sound of machines moving through the smoke. The battlefield was not silent anymore. Something was coming, and their time was running out. The warrior took a step back, keeping the child close. The huntress did not move, only watched him with eyes that glowed like fire in the dark. And in that moment, the warrior understood one truth. The war had not ended in the ashes. It had only just begun. The ruins were still breathing with smoke, the air heavy and sharp. The warrior stood frozen, the child trembling in his arms, his eyes locked on the alien Huntress who had stepped out of the shadows. She was tall and fierce, her armor made of strange metal that caught the faint light of the fires, her face half hidden beneath a mask of scars and symbols. She looked like death itself, yet her voice had carried words that refused to leave his mind. "She is yours," she had whispered. The warrior could not shake those words. They clung to him like chains, pulling at his thoughts. How could this broken, fragile child belong to him, when he had never seen her before, never held her, never even dreamed of such a thing? Still, the Huntress's eyes carried certainty, and it made him doubt himself. The warrior took a step back, shifting the child in his arms, her small face pressed against his chest. He spoke with caution, his voice deep and steady though his heart raced. "Why do you say that?" The Huntress tilted her head slightly, her sharp gaze never leaving the child. "Because it is the truth," she said, her voice almost too soft for someone who looked so fierce. "She is bound to you, human, by blood and by fate." The warrior felt his breath catch. "Blood," she had said. The word struck him like a blade, for he knew no alien would use it carelessly. But before he could speak again, the ground shivered, and a low hum rolled through the air. From the far end of the ruins, lights moved, red and sharp, scanning through the smoke. The Huntress's head turned sharply, her body tensing like a predator sensing danger. "They are coming," she whispered, "and they will not show mercy." The warrior knew she was right. The sound of the machines grew louder, their heavy steps echoing against the broken stones. War drones built for killing, their sensors hunting for heat and life. He had fought them before, and each battle had cost blood and pain. With the child in his arms, there was no chance of victory. But the Huntress did not raise her weapon against him. She raised it toward the smoke, toward the approaching threat. She stepped closer, her movements smooth and silent, like a shadow given form. The warrior gritted his teeth, his instincts screaming to strike her before she struck him. Yet she did not attack. Instead, she whispered again, her words colder this time. "If you want her to live, follow me." The warrior's mind raced. Could he trust her, this alien who spoke in riddles, who claimed the child was his? Every story he had heard about her kind spoke of bloodshed, cruelty, and betrayal. But the sound of the machines was drawing nearer, the red lights cutting through the smoke like hungry eyes. He looked down at the child, her small hands clutching his armor, her eyes half open but filled with silent fear. He made his choice. "Lead the way," he said, his voice low and firm. The Huntress turned without a word, moving through the ruins with quiet precision. The warrior followed, his steps heavy but steady, his arms tight around the girl. Together they slipped into the broken skeleton of a building, its walls cracked and leaning. The air inside was thick with dust, but it offered cover. They moved deeper, down into tunnels that had once carried power and light, but now echoed only with the sounds of their breaths. The machines passed above, their voices mechanical, cold, and sharp. The warrior pressed his back against the wall, his hand on his weapon, the child held close. The Huntress crouched beside him, her eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. For a long moment, they waited, the silence between them heavy with unspoken questions. Then the child stirred, her small voice breaking the air. She whispered words, strange words, not human, not clear. The warrior frowned, his heart tightening. The Huntress's eyes narrowed, and she looked at him, her voice a whisper sharper than any blade. "She speaks the tongue of my kind." The warrior felt his blood run cold. The child in his arms, human in form, carried alien words on her tongue. He could not understand them, but the Huntress did, and the way her eyes flickered told him it meant more than she wanted to admit. "She is not ordinary," the Huntress said, her voice filled with a weight he could not ignore. "She is yours because she is both, yours and mine." The warrior shook his head, disbelief in his voice. "That is impossible." But even as he said the words, he felt the truth pressing in, heavy and undeniable. The child looked at him, then at the Huntress, as if she belonged to both worlds. The warrior's chest tightened with a strange fear. Fear not of the Huntress, not of the machines, but of the mystery living in the child he now carried. Above them, the machines moved away, their sounds fading into the distance. But the silence that followed was not peace. It was a silence heavy with secrets. The warrior knew the night was far from over. And he knew one truth. His life had just been chained to a destiny he did not yet understand. The tunnels were dark and endless, their walls dripping with old water and covered in shadows. The warrior carried the child close to his chest, his arms strong, but his mind filled with questions. The Huntress moved ahead of him, silent and sharp, every step as precise as if she had walked these paths 100 times before. The air smelled of rust and smoke, and every sound echoed too loudly, making the warrior's senses stay on edge. He wanted answers, but each time he opened his mouth, the words felt heavy. Finally, when the machines above had grown distant, he spoke, his voice low but steady. "You will tell me what this means," he said, "why you whispered she is mine, why the child speaks in your tongue." The Huntress did not stop, but her voice floated back through the darkness, cold and calm. "Because the truth cannot be hidden forever," she said, "and now you carry it in your arms." The warrior's grip tightened on the girl, her small body weak, but breathing softly against his chest. He had fought aliens before, seen their cruelty, their hunger for conquest, their weapons burning entire colonies into ash. Yet this Huntress was different. She did not strike, she did not sneer, she did not even try to take the child from him. Instead, she guided him through the ruins, as if protecting both of them from the dangers outside. After a long silence, the Huntress stopped, turning to face him, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light of a broken power line that flickered overhead. "She is not just a child," the Huntress said, her voice heavy with meaning. "She carries the blood of your kind and mine." The warrior felt the words crash into him. His breath caught, his chest tightened, and he shook his head. "That is not possible," he said, his voice hard, almost angry. But the Huntress did not flinch, her gaze unbroken. "It is not only possible," she whispered. "It has already been done." The warrior's mind swirled with disbelief. He remembered the wars, the hatred, the endless battles between their species. Humans and her kind had only known death together, never life, never love. How could this child be born from both worlds? It felt like a lie, a trick, something meant to weaken him. But when he looked at the child's face, her soft features marked by human lines, but her eyes glowing faintly with an alien hue, he felt the doubt breaking him. "Who did this?" he demanded, his voice rough. "Who created her?" The Huntress's expression shifted, a shadow of sorrow crossing her sharp features. "My people," she said, "long ago in secret they began their work, mixing what should never be mixed, seeking to bind strength and spirit into one form." Her voice trembled for the first time, though only slightly. They called it salvation, but it was built on cruelty and blood. The warrior stared at her, his grip on the child tightening. "Then she is an experiment," he said bitterly, "a weapon." The Huntress shook her head, her voice firm now. "No," she whispered, "she is more than that. She is hope, and also fear, because both our worlds will want her destroyed before they accept her." The warrior felt anger burn inside him. If this was true, the child was never meant to live freely. She was born into chains, hunted before she could even walk. He looked down at her again, her fragile face resting against him, her breath steady despite the weight of the secret she carried in her blood. She was innocent, yet already a target of forces far greater than either of them. The Huntress stepped closer, her armor gleaming faintly in the flickering light. "You must understand," she said softly. "I was sent here with orders. I was to find her and end her life before she could become known." The warrior's heart froze, his weapon hand twitching as rage filled him. But before he could react, she continued, her voice breaking like glass. "I could not do it," she whispered, "because when I saw her, I saw more than orders. I saw something I did not believe existed, a bridge between our worlds. Her words left a heavy silence between them. The warrior studied her face, searching for lies, but all he found was a pain she did not try to hide. For the first time, she looked less like a predator and more like someone carrying a burden too heavy to bear. The child stirred, her small voice mumbling strange sounds again, words neither fully human nor fully alien. The huntress's eyes softened, and she reached out, almost touching the child before pulling her hand back, as if afraid. The warrior spoke again, his voice quieter now, but filled with steel. If what you say is true, then both your kind and mine will hunt her. They will not let her live. The huntress nodded slowly. Yes, she whispered, and that is why you must decide if you will fight for her or leave her to the ashes. The warrior's jaw tightened, his mind torn between fear and duty. He had lost everything in this war, his comrades, his home, his peace. Now in his arms was a child who might be his blood, his fate, and the key to something larger than the war itself. He could not walk away, not now, not ever. Above them, a deep metallic roar shook the tunnels, the sound of machines closing in again. The huntress turned her head sharply, her weapon ready. Her voice was steady, but her words were heavy with urgency. Choose quickly, warrior, because the darkness is moving, and they will not stop until she is gone. The tunnel shook with the heavy sound of machines above, each metallic step sending dust raining down from the cracked ceiling. The warrior tightened his hold on the child, his eyes locked on the huntress who stood ready with her weapon, her body tense like a coiled predator. She glanced back at him, her voice low but sharp. They're closing in. We must move now. Without waiting for his answer, she turned and darted deeper into the tunnels, her movements swift and silent despite the weight of her armor. The warrior followed, his boots echoing against the stone floor, the child clinging to him as if she knew the danger breathing down their necks. The air grew colder the deeper they went, the walls narrowing, the light fading until only the faint glow of the huntress's armor guided the way. Behind them, the echo of machines grew louder, their sensors clicking, their metal bodies grinding against the ground as they searched. The warrior's heart pounded, every beat louder than the sound of his steps. He had escaped traps before, but never while carrying something so fragile, never with a child depending on his every breath. He forced himself forward, every muscle burning with the weight of both the girl and the choice he had made. The child stirred in his arms, her small lips moving, whispering words in a language he could not understand. The sound chilled him, soft and strange, flowing like water, yet sharp as a blade. The huntress turned her head slightly, her glowing eyes catching his. She speaks again, the huntress murmured, her voice heavy with meaning. Do you understand what she says? The warrior asked, his voice rough. The huntress's face was unreadable as she replied. She speaks of the shadows that follow, and of the fire that waits ahead. The warrior frowned, confused, but there was no time for questions. A sharp blast shook the tunnel behind them, light flooding through the cracks as the machines forced their way inside. The huntress hissed under her breath and pushed forward faster. Run, she ordered, her voice carrying no doubt. And so the warrior ran, his boots striking hard against the floor, his arms locked tight around the girl, the air burning in his lungs. They turned corners, slipped through broken archways, and ducked beneath collapsed beams. Each step carried them further from the light of the machines, but the sound of pursuit never faded. The warrior's muscles screamed for rest, but he did not slow, because one pause, one hesitation, would mean death. The tunnels opened into a vast chamber, an underground station long abandoned. Rust-covered rails stretched into darkness, old vehicles broken and silent like skeletons of a forgotten time. The huntress raised her hand, signaling him to stop. She listened, every line of her body sharp with focus. The warrior could hear it too, multiple machines entering the chamber from another side, their red lights cutting through the smoke. Trapped, The word echoed in his mind, but before despair could take him, the Huntress moved. She leapt onto one of the old rails, crouched low, her weapon ready, her voice a whisper. "There's a passage beneath. Follow me, stay low." She pulled aside a broken panel, revealing a narrow crawl space hidden beneath the tracks. The warrior glanced at it, then at her, suspicion flickering. "You knew this place," he said, his voice low. Her eyes glowed faintly as she replied, "I walked these tunnels long before you. Warrior, I know their veins better than you know your own blade." There was no choice. He crouched and slid into the narrow space. The child pressed close against him, the Huntress following behind, sealing the panel just as the red lights swept across the chamber above. From the darkness, the machine's heavy steps shook the ground, their scanning beams sweeping over the wreckage. The warrior held his breath, his body pressed against the cold floor, his heart hammering so loudly he feared it would betray them. The child whimpered softly, her hand tightening on his chest. The Huntress placed a steady hand on his shoulder, her touch firm, a silent command to stay still. Minutes passed like hours, the sound of metal feet moving closer, then fading, then circling back. Finally, the hum of the machines drifted away, their red lights dimming into the distance. Only then did the Huntress whisper, "They are gone for now." The warrior pushed forward through the crawl space until it opened into another tunnel. He rose to his feet, his arms aching from carrying the child, but his resolve unbroken. The Huntress stood beside him, her weapon still ready, her eyes watching both him and the shadows ahead. "You run well for a human weighed by flesh and doubt," she said, almost mocking, yet her tone carried something else, something like respect. The warrior grunted, unwilling to waste words, but he could not ignore the truth. The Huntress had guided him through death, and without her, they would already be ash. The child stirred again, her small voice whispering more of the strange language. The warrior looked down, confused and uneasy. "What is she saying this time?" he asked. The Huntress lowered her head slightly, her voice quiet. "She says the light will betray us, and the darkness will protect us. She says we must walk where even the shadows are afraid to follow." The warrior's jaw tightened. He did not understand her words, but he could feel their weight. The Huntress's face was grim, and for the first time, he realized she was not only guiding them through tunnels, she was guiding them through a path she herself feared. Together, they stepped deeper into the darkness, the sound of machines fading behind them, but never gone. The warrior felt the child's heartbeat against his chest, fast and fragile, and he swore silently that no matter what the Huntress's secret truly was, no matter what the child represented, he would not let her fall. The Huntress walked ahead, her eyes glowing faintly, her weapon ready, and though her steps were steady, her whisper carried a truth he could not forget. "They will hunt us until the end, warrior, but the shadows may yet choose our side." The tunnels twisted deeper into the earth, the walls damp and breathing with the smell of stone and metal. The warrior's arms ached from holding the child, but he would not loosen his grip, not even for a moment. The Huntress moved ahead with steady steps, her weapon glowing faintly in the dark, her sharp eyes scanning every shadow. Neither of them spoke for a long time, the silence broken only by the drip of water and the faint hum of machines far behind. But silence could not hold forever. The warrior's voice finally cut through, rough and heavy. "You have told me pieces, but not the truth. Not all of it. I will have it now." The Huntress did not turn, but her steps slowed, her head lowering slightly. "You think you are ready to hear?" she asked, her voice quiet. The warrior's jaw tightened. "I carry her in my arms. I have no choice but to be ready." The Huntress stopped at last, turning to face him, her glowing eyes reflecting the dim light of the tunnel. "She is not only human, not only of my kind," she said, her voice steady. "She is the bridge they try to build in secret, a child born from two worlds, created in shadows so deep even most of my people do not know. She was meant to be a weapon, a tool, a key to control both your kind and mine. The warrior's chest tightened, his anger rising. You mean they experimented on her? They used her as nothing but flesh for their games of power. The huntress nodded slowly, sorrow flashing briefly across her face. They used many before her. Most did not survive. She is the only one who lived, the only one strong enough to carry both lines of blood. The warrior looked down at the girl in his arms, her small face calm in sleep, but her breathing shallow. His anger burned hotter. Innocent blood had been spilled, children sacrificed to ambition, and yet here she was, alive against all odds. She should not have to carry this, he said, his voice breaking into a whisper. The huntress stepped closer, her eyes soft, but her words sharp. She's not only surviving, warrior, she is more. She carries power neither of us can yet understand. The warrior shook his head. She is a child, he said firmly, not a weapon, not a key, not some curse. The huntress studied him for a long moment. Then her lips curved slightly in something between sorrow and respect. You speak as if you were her father already, she whispered. The words struck him deeper than any blade. Could he be her father? He had never seen her before that day. And yet the way she clung to him, the way her tiny fingers gripped his armor, it felt like a bond written in his blood. His mind fought against it, but his heart refused to let go of the thought. He turned his eyes back to the huntress, suspicion rising again. You said you were ordered to kill her, and me as well. Why did you not do it? The huntress lowered her weapon, her shoulders heavy as if weighed by years of silence. Because I saw myself in her, she whispered, her voice trembling now. I was born under orders, raised as nothing but a weapon, trained to kill without thought. I was never allowed to be more than their tool. But when I looked at her, I could not bring the blade down. I chose betrayal instead. I chose her. The warrior's anger softened, though his mistrust did not fully fade. He saw the pain in her eyes, pain carved deeper than scars. Perhaps she was telling the truth, perhaps not, but he could no longer deny that she was protecting them now, guiding them through death itself. The child stirred again, her small voice spilling strange words into the air, half human, half alien, yet carrying a rhythm that made the warrior's skin prickle. The huntress closed her eyes, listening, her lips moving silently as if repeating the words. Finally she spoke. She says the blood remembers. She says it cannot be erased. The warrior frowned. What does that mean? The huntress's eyes opened, glowing faintly. It means she carries memory inside her veins. Memory of both worlds, perhaps even more, perhaps something older, something neither of us can yet see. The warrior felt the weight of her words settle on his chest. The child was not only alive, she was a living truth, a truth that would tear apart both species if revealed. The huntress stepped closer, her gaze sharp now, her voice low but firm. You must understand, warrior, they will come for her, your kind and mine. They will burn the earth itself to bury her existence. And if you stand in their way, they will burn you as well. The warrior's hand tightened on his weapon, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. Then let them come, he said. They will not touch her, not while I breathe. The huntress's lips parted, surprise flickering across her face before she quickly masked it. You speak with fire, but fire alone will not save her, she said. We will need shadow, silence, and blood. Before he could reply, the ground above shook violently, dust falling like rain around them. The machines were moving again, closer, heavier, their voices mechanical and merciless. The huntress raised her weapon, her eyes burning. They have found us, warrior, and they will not stop until truth and blood are buried in the dark. The ground shook as if the earth itself carried the rage of war. Dust fell from the cracked ceiling, coating the warrior's armor, and the child whimpered softly against his chest. The huntress raised her weapon, her glowing eyes scanning the shadows of the tunnel, her voice sharp and steady. They are here, she whispered. They have followed us into the bones of the earth. The warrior adjusted his grip on the child, his muscles tense. "Then we stand and fight," he said, his tone filled with steel. But the huntress shook her head, her movements sharp. "No, not here. The tunnels will collapse. We must draw them away. We must lead them where the ground favors us." Before the warrior could argue, the sound of metal feet echoed closer, heavy and relentless. Red lights cut through the dark like hungry eyes, shadows twisting with each pulse. The machines came in formation, their weapons glowing with cold energy. The warrior stepped back, his jaw tight, his weapon ready though his arms were burdened by the child. And then something unexpected happened. From the shadows behind, more figures emerged, tall and armored, but not machines. Aliens, living soldiers of the Huntress's kind, their armor marked with the same scars and symbols that covered hers. They moved with deadly grace, surrounding the tunnel with ease. Their blades and rifles pointed directly at the warrior. The warrior cursed under his breath, his mind racing. He had walked into a trap. His eyes snapped to the Huntress, rage burning inside him. "You led me here," he growled, his voice low and dangerous. The Huntress did not lower her weapon, but her face was unreadable, caught between duty and something deeper. "I warned you," she said softly. "They would not stop, not until she's gone." The alien soldiers stepped closer, their leader raising a long blade that shimmered faintly in the low light. "You have done well, Huntress," the leader said, his voice echoing through his helmet, cold and sharp. "The elders will reward you for bringing both the experiment and the human protector to us." The warrior's breath caught, his rage erupting. So it was true, betrayal had been her game all along. He shifted his stance, ready to strike, even if it cost his life. But then, the Huntress moved. She stepped between him and the soldiers, her weapon raised not at him, but at her own kind. Her voice cut through the air like thunder. "No," she said, her words trembling with fury. "I will not deliver her to you." The alien leader froze, his blade hovering. "Do not speak madness, Huntress," he hissed. "You know your duty." But the Huntress's eyes blazed, her voice rising. "My duty is no longer to your lies. My duty is to her." The warrior blinked, his anger clashing with confusion. Had she betrayed him or betrayed them? The soldiers shifted uneasily, their weapons tightening, their loyalty uncertain. The leader raised his blade higher, his voice filled with venom. "You dare defy the elders. You dare betray the oath you were born into." The Huntress's voice broke, but her words were steady. "They made me a weapon, but I choose what I strike," she whispered. She turned her gaze briefly to the warrior, her glowing eyes filled with something fierce and raw. "Take her," she said, thrusting her weapon into his hand, the metal warm with her touch. "Protect her, warrior. She is yours, even if the world denies it." The warrior gripped the weapon, his heart pounding. He had not expected this, not from her, not after all her silence and shadows. But now she was standing between him and her own kind, ready to bleed for the child she was ordered to kill. The alien leader roared, his soldiers stepping forward with blades raised. "Then you are lost, Huntress, and you will die with them." The tunnels erupted in chaos. Blades clashed, rifles fired, sparks and screams filled the air. The Huntress moved with impossible speed, striking down two soldiers before their weapons could pierce her armor. The warrior fought beside her, one arm holding the child, the other swinging the blade she had given him. The weight of it felt right in his hands, as if it belonged to him. He cut through one soldier, his fury fueled not only by survival, but by the vow burning in his chest. The child cried out, her voice rising above the roar of battle. The strange words poured from her lips again, louder this time, echoing off the stone walls. The soldiers faltered, their movements stuttering as if her voice carried power beyond understanding. The warrior felt it too, the vibration in his bones, the fire in his blood. Even the Huntress paused for a heartbeat, her glowing eyes widening. The alien leader snarled, pushing forward. "Silence her," he shouted, his blade raised high. But before he could strike, the Huntress blocked him, their weapons colliding in a storm of sparks. Her voice was a hiss of fury. "She will not fall to you." The warrior pulled back with the child, his blade cutting down another soldier, his eyes locked on the Huntress as she fought against her own kind. Every strike she made was filled with rage, but also with sorrow, as if each blow carved away the chains of her past. And in that moment, the warrior understood. This was her betrayal, not of him, but of them, her own people, her own orders, her own life of blood and chains. Still, the battle was not theirs to win. More soldiers pressed into the tunnel, their numbers endless, their fury unmatched. The warrior's strength began to fade, the child's cries still shaking the air with unexplainable power. The Huntress bled from wounds across her armor, but she fought like fire itself. Finally, she glanced back at him, her voice breaking through the chaos. "Go," she shouted. "Take her and run. I will hold them." The warrior shook his head, his jaw tight. "I will not leave you." But her eyes burned, fierce and desperate. "You must," she whispered. "For her, for the truth, she must live, even if we do not." The tunnel burned with fire and smoke, each clash of steel and blast of energy shaking the ground. The warrior gripped the child close to his chest, his blade still glowing with the heat of battle. Behind him, the Huntress fought like a storm, her body moving with a deadly grace born of years of training, every strike cutting through her own kind. She did not fight to survive, she fought to give them a chance. The alien soldiers pressed harder, their numbers endless, their cries filling the chamber like thunder. The Huntress roared with fury, her voice echoing off the stone walls, her weapon carving through armor and bone. But blood dripped from her wounds, her strength fading, though her fire refused to die. The warrior wanted to stay, to fight beside her until the end, but the child's small hand pressed against his chest reminded him of the promise he had made. He turned, forcing his legs to move, running deeper into the tunnels, the child's cries echoing behind him. The air was thick with smoke, every step a battle, but he did not stop. The ground shook with each explosion, dust falling like rain, the tunnel threatening to collapse at any moment. Still, he ran because if he stopped, if he faltered, all of it would be lost. Behind him, the sound of the Huntress's battle cries grew faint, then vanished into the roar of the collapsing tunnel. The warrior's chest ached, not from the running, not from the weight of the child, but from the thought of her standing alone against the storm. He wanted to turn back, but he knew it would mean death, not only for him, but for the girl he carried. He whispered through his teeth, his voice breaking, "Hold the shadows, Huntress, hold them." At last, the tunnel opened, spilling into the surface. The warrior stumbled out into the cold air of dawn, the smoke of battle rising behind him. The ruins stretched far and wide, the earth broken and blackened, but the first light of the sun touched the horizon. The child stirred in his arms, her small voice whispering words again, strange and soft, yet filled with a power he could not understand. He stopped, looking down at her, his heart heavy but fierce. "You're safe," he whispered, though his voice cracked. "I will not let them take you, not while I breathe." The child's glowing eyes opened, meeting his, and for the first time, she smiled, a faint, fragile smile that carried more strength than any weapon. The warrior looked toward the horizon, his mind filled with questions he could not answer. What was she truly? What power did she carry? And why had fate bound her to him? But none of that mattered now. What mattered was the vow that burned inside him like fire. He would protect her, no matter what came, no matter who hunted them, no matter how many battles waited ahead. The sound of engines rumbled in the distance, the machines still searching, the war still burning. But the warrior no longer felt like a soldier wandering ruins. He felt like something else, something more. For the first time since the war began, he carried hope, not for himself, but for the child, for the possibility that she was not a curse, but a future. He adjusted his grip, The blade the Huntress had given him still at his side, her final gift, her final trust. He thought of her face in the tunnels, her glowing eyes filled with sorrow and fire, her voice whispering her last command. Protect her, warrior, she is yours. The words echoed in his heart like a promise carved into stone. The first light of the sun rose higher, burning away the shadows, touching the child's face with warmth. She reached out a tiny hand toward the sky, her glowing eyes reflecting the light. The warrior watched her, his voice steady now, his vow stronger than any fear. "This is your dawn, little one," he whispered, "and I will walk it with you." Behind them, the ruins burned, the war still raging. Ahead of them, the world lay broken but waiting, and in the middle of it all, a human warrior and a child born of two worlds stepped into the light. Together, they carried the weight of blood, the truth of betrayal, and the fragile hope of a future not yet written. The war had taken everything from him, but in the ashes, it had given him something new. Not a weapon, not a tool, not a curse, a daughter. And for her, he would fight until the very end.